The fact that we are in Grand Central Station has absolutely nothing to do with this interview, but we are joined by Lara Setrakian, the ace correspondent for ABC and Bloomberg News based in Dubai, who has had the very unique vantage point of monitoring all the events in the region from the Iranian protests of 2009 through the Arab Spring of today, and has done some amazing reportage. Lara, it's great to have you with us. Can you tell us what has been for you the most dramatic moment of the last couple of years that you've been covering the region?
Absolutely Tahrir Square, where you could zoom in on drama at all of the entry points, and then in the core of Tahrir Square, this notion that they would spontaneously protect something that they built just over the days of revolution. And this one incredible moment where we zoomed in on one of the entrances to Tahrir, and you could see a line of 4 rows deep, just of young men standing sentinel, 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m., and they would just stand there and just protect Tahrir. And then you would see these streams of Mubarak thugs running toward them. I remember thinking it was like they were being poured out of a cup onto Tahrir Square, because they would just charge. And these young men were so brave, and it was cold out, and they were just standing side by side to protect Tahrir Square. And that's what you saw in Iran, and that's what you saw, that's what we're seeing now in Syria and Libya, this willingness to either stand sentinel or run into the guys with the guns and into the guys with the batons. And I just remember thinking that it was a few weeks before that that young men were setting themselves on fire in the Arab world. And now that they had this opportunity, you weren't hearing about that anymore. They were putting that into something new.
And a lot of people in the West have been painting this as the Facebook revolution or the Twitter revolution, but since you've been in the region for a long time, isn't it also, in a deeper sense, the Al Jazeera revolution?
Absolutely. I think the impact in terms of a multiplier effect, a media multiplier effect, was really coming from Jazeera and Arabiya. But Jazeera, because of their deployment of correspondents, the thickness of their coverage across these different countries, and the footage that was coming out first on Jazeera really galvanized public response. When we look at social media, it hasn't been obvious. It hasn't been an obvious transferal country by country. What you saw in Egypt and Tunisia was social media used to organize, mobilize, and publicize these events. Then you get to a place like Libya, and it's really more about connecting the diaspora and the Libyan opposition outside the country with whatever was bubbling up inside. So it wasn't so direct an impact.
Now, Al Jazeera may open up in the United States finally, which is perhaps long overdue, but at the same time, major Western media outlets, CNBC, BBC, CNN, all want to go into the Arabic language. But how are they really going to compete with Al Jazeera and Al Arabiya?
Well, they're not. I mean, BBC Arabic is possibly the exception, and BBC Persian, because they've built up a credibility. If not the volume of work and reporting that you see on Jazeera, they have the credibility. So when something's on BBC Arabic, BBC Persian, it's having an impact, especially in Iran. And you also see it, the Middle Eastern indigenous networks have been very successful at colonizing other areas. NBC Persian really breaking through to the Iranian viewer. American channels, we'll see how they go. Sky News opening up in Arabic now. We'll see what comes next. CNBC has been in Arabic for some time. I don't know that they've had the same kind of impact, but again, BBC, partially because of their mission to inform, has really gone the extra mile.
Now, is there a story in this whole Arab Spring that people have just missed out on in all of the upheaval and just jumping day to day from Syria to Yemen to Libya? What have we been missing?
The trends, the totality, the heat map. Very few of us have been able to capture the fact that everything's happening at the same time. So even if the laser beam of media focuses somewhere else, you're missing the fact that having this all happen at the same time is almost reprogramming Arab leadership. I tweeted something from Egypt that has continued to be true, which is this is the first time that Arab leaders are afraid of their people and not the other way around. And that is resetting the policy decisions, the dynamic, and you can see these leaders kind of walking on a waterbed as they try to figure out their next move. This is some trends we're seeing already. More popular, I want to say popular discourse, but certainly a kind of seesaw between people coming out onto the streets and then the leadership trying to do something about it, sometimes stumbling, throwing money in their direction. But we're going to see a different course of action. So let's say Syria. President Bashar al-Assad may or may not live longer or shorter in his political life because of what happened here, but he's definitely going to have to make different decisions because of it. Same with Iran. We'll see what happens with the changeover of the next supreme leader. But the fact is the calculus has changed in the upper echelons of politics. So that's what we're watching for, and that's what's been missed.
Lara, thank you for striking fear in the hearts of dictators with your amazing coverage, and thanks for joining us on foreignpolicy.com.
Thanks for having me.